Heralds and Hunters, this is Internet Personality Vangelus, and Wave 1 of Titans Returns Deluxes was half stuffed with solid blue newbie headmasters. Scourge totally stands alongside Voyager Galvatron, and was also never a headmaster, but he was a target master. That's like 25% relevant. Because, look, his Titanmaster is Fracas! He's in Scourge colors now, because he'd probably stick out like a sore thumb if he turned into a gray head with blue bits on the front. He's also got some paint, light blue boot strips on his shins, and a lovely two-tone combo of a silver face and red visor. Paint on North American Titanmaster robot modes always makes me happy, as does Fracas' butt pipe, because that is unique to him and him alone! See, when he turns into a Scourge head, he has a Blur-style pop-up head thingy. Great in concept, and I found it worked way better out of the package than Blur's. Also, it looks like a butt pipe, whereas Blur's just looks like a butt fin. This dude makes for a real okay Scourge and or sweep head, coming real close to escaping the fact that he's got Scourge's head protruding from a large squared off block. It still is Scourge's head protruding from a large squared off block, and it's kinda small, but I don't know, I somehow expected a worse visual. Scourge's alt mode does have a happy little opening cockpit for Fracas, but wait! The peg hole on top is very specifically halfway squared off entirely, so you can do this dumbass G1 reference thing. I'm smiling. Anyway, yeah, Fracas can fly his bearded pal if you put him in the cockpit. The space boat silhouette is present here, though it feels to me like it has some fast packs bolted onto either side. There's something patchwork and jagged about it, but not necessarily in a bad way. And there's paint, too! 3 shades of G1 toyetic blue can be seen if you include the base plastics, with silver side thrusters and a little red dot on the top-mounted thingamy. Each of the side thrusters is actually a 5mm port, putting 2 on either side to go with the 2 up top. This means there are many places to put Scourge's generic Titans Return chair gun. Placing anything on the frontmost port up top effectively blocks the cockpit's vision, which is amusing. Even more amusing is the placement of 2 Titanmaster foot pegs near the very front of the space boat, for those thrill-seeking little fracai. You know, the surfer kind. Fracai is plural of fracases. My biggest issue with this mode are the 2 blue flaps on the bottom. Despite their surface sculpting, they stick out like a sore thumb. They were also very floppy out of the package, making their display stand compatible peg holes annoying to even try to use. I wish they folded up more cleanly and solidly and like clipped into place. Scourge's rear half turns into his robotic top half in a very predictable way, which kinda sets you up for the surprise of how involved his lower half ends up being to convert. Not like total genius tier transforming puzzle stuff by any means, but I certainly didn't think that the legs would unfold that far outwards and then use a collapsing spine to suck back in. By the way, the spine does end up ramming into the cockpit, so get Fracas out of there before you do that step, and then have fun attaching him, as Scourge's neck socket is very often abysmal on most copies of this toy. It doesn't grip all that well, and the clip itself rattles around a little inside of the torso's collar. I was able to fix it with a long process of carefully applied superglue, but that really crossed a border as far as what I'm comfortable having to modify on the part of the figure that represents the line-wide gimmick. Whether or not you fix things up, the end result is a real okay Scourge and or sweep. The body and proportions are fine, but the wings are so squared off, lacking any curves or, well, wing-like qualities. They're definitely more of a cape, but they also don't really hang. They're like a very protrudy cape that probably could have done with sitting a little lower on the figure's back. A cape mounted like wings. Anyway, this is all compounded by a problem that was also seen on Scourge's similarly but more turquoisey blue wavemate, Blur. His robot mode has 3 silver and black tampagraphs and a yellow square on his waist that's so thinly applied it looks a little green. And that's it. He's a very monotone blue man with a silver face and a sky blue backpack. The figure ends up looking extremely boring, actually losing some of the more interesting visual play that was seen in his vehicle mode. And he comes with a very boring chair gun. You can add his alt mode's cockpit thingy to make the gun triple-barreled and slightly more lively, and you can seat a Titanmaster in it. Look, it's a Titanmaster. So if your Scourge is out of the box, he probably has a really useless wobbly head. Mine, being a fixed-up one, has a Titan's Return Titanmaster ball socket neck. He's able to tilt his head a little bit. He's able to look up pretty decently, and he can even sort of look down just a little bit. Although usually I have him looking all the way down and just assume his faux pupils are looking up. I just think it looks more natural that way than up here. and also having it all the way down eliminates any remaining wiggle from the sort of questionable grip the clamp has. He's got ball socket shoulders, which can go out about that far, and can go forwards and backwards happily. There's also a transformation hinge, so you can hinge his shoulders up to get a full T-pose, or, you know, something close to a T-pose. It just means that his shoulder pauldrons get more and more stupid looking as you do that. He's got bicep swivels on a mushroom joint, and they sort of work themselves out of the bicep every now and then. There's a bit of mold flash, at least on mine, and I'm not sure where it is precisely, so I didn't want to go through filing it just yet, because it doesn't happen enough to irritate me, but I'm sure I could tweak the thing if I really wanted to. Some would argue, why do you have to tweak things on a toy you bought? I don't disagree. His wings have got a hinge here and a hinge here, so if you want to make them just, like, disappear, there you go. Or, you know, have them look really stupid. I just go for the pseudo-stupid. Anyway, elbow joint is on a pin. It can go in just past 90 degrees. No wrist joint. He's got this transformation joint, and it doesn't lock anywhere, and it looks best here. The problem is the farthest out it goes is here, and I think that looks stupid. And then it can also fall in that way. It's not super strong. Sometimes when he's holding a weapon and you have him tilted the wrong way, gravity will just make his wrist start to go in. Pretty terrible wrists. Also, no waist joint, even though in here there is a swivel that ends up inside his stomach. So, sadly, no waist joint. There is, however, forward and backward leg motion, and then some sort of lightly detented hips. Whoa. Keep yourself together. The reason I say lightly detented is that I can kind of move them. Dude. The reason I say lightly is because they don't really loudly click, but there are clearly like 4 detent points going all the way out to a perfect Van Damme split. But you see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you get them to stop in between the detents? Kind of. It's also why I would say they're sort of light, but they will snap into place if you mess around too much, so be prepared to deal with that. There's a mushroom peg thigh swivel that doesn't come apart like the biceps do. There's a simple knee hinge, and it can go the full 90 degrees if you really push. So that's kind of cool. The front of his shin, though, it's supposed to lock in with a tab, but this happens all the time. It just gets totally janked out of place really easily. He's got a transformation joint on his foot, and he's got a big heel, and it has a transformation joint as well. They can kind of move in unison up to about here, so if you want to have him stepping forward and having a bit of a more solid stance on the rear leg, you can kind of accomplish that. As I was saying, you can kind of accomplish that. You gonna play nice here? Yeah, there you go. See, he's standing all happily now. So, Titan's Return Scourge is not hyper-posable, he's averagely posable. He doesn't have wrist swivels or a waist joint, and as I've said before, it's hard to take those for granted anymore on mainline Transformers, unfortunately. I don't have trouble getting him into poses, I just find he always looks a little bit dumb in a lot of poses. These wrists are the worst. I wish that they stopped before they went past that point. Going over here is just sadness. Scourge is the bottom barrel loser of Wave 1's Deluxes by several factors. He's the most commonly shoddily built, and the most boring to look at in robot mode, and the most obviously maybe not meant to be a headmaster when you focus on his cranium, and even his vehicle mode has these dumb dangly flaps on the bottom. I really hoped he'd turn out better, but man, it's hard to find the silver linings on this guy. Usually you want to troop build your Scourges, but you'd have to be a die-hard and also a masochist to do so with the Titan's Return version. If you were to be the kind of idiot who'd purchase more than one Scourge, you'd have the advantage of being able to trade weapons around to form more symmetrical vehicle modes. I call these configurations the Heavy Sweep and the Interceptor Sweep, respectively. Of course, if you were a total moron, you'd need to buy 4 of this guy to have a symmetrical squadron of those arrangements. And then you'd probably want a 5th one to be the main Scourge at the center of the formation. But what kind of dumbass would buy a toy he doesn't like literally 4+ times in a row? Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and listen, if you're gonna get a 5th one, at least hold off and let me tell you about how much better things went for this figure overseas.